the latest from Ukraine. Officials there say Russian forces continue pounding areas around Kyiv, and that is despite a pledge to pull back as both sides are still trying to negotiate. CBS reporter Skylar Henry live for us in Washington with more on this. Hi, Skylar.
Hey, Sarah, good to see you. Well, if you let defense officials and really intelligence officials tell it, they were always skeptical over the Russians in terms of their claims about them pulling back, so much so that Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby talked about this today, saying that the movement that they have seen around Kyiv is really more so of a repositioning, if you will, really some sort of around 20%, and that's towards the north, towards the Belarusian border. And really, we should be viewing this as a repositioning, a resupply, stocking up, if you will, and trying to determine how they will reshuffle those troops, if you will, and not necessarily withdrawing troops from that area. But we've seen movement, obviously, towards the north in Chernihiv, so much so that Ukrainian officials say that airstrikes and ground incursions continue in that area, obviously near Kyiv as well. It's raising the concerns of Ukrainian officials. The president spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for nearly an hour earlier today, talking about not only the situation on the ground, but also just the security assistance that is needed in that country. And then he also talked about the U.S. pledging some $500 million to go towards the Ukrainian government directly. This comes on top of the $800 million that the U.S. sent to Ukraine that was starting to be felt and trickled in just last week in terms of for military assistance. And remember, there's obviously the humanitarian component to this as well. The president last week was in Europe talking about this with some of those Western allies, trying to figure out how best to try to solve that issue. We know that the U.S. is taking in 100,000 refugees in and of itself. Obviously, other European allies are doing the same as well. And perhaps the more notable thing that happened here today is that a top general in the European command said that based on the war in Ukraine, it is highly possible that we could see the American strategy shift, if you will, in terms of how they view the continent, thinking that things may perhaps shift given how this war plays out. Obviously, U.S. troops will be positioned at different places, certain NATO allies to try to best protect them as well, but a lot of different movement happening as the hours go on, Sarah.
You know, Skylar, so much speculation about Vladimir Putin's state of mind, his mentality, his relationships inside the Kremlin. All of that has been very mysterious to this point. So what can you tell us about these reports that there is tension between Russia's president and some of his military leaders?
Well, that's the interesting thing. That is certainly what we confirmed today. CBS News confirmed that based off of declassified intelligence that was released today, we've learned that Russian President Vladimir Putin may be actually being misled by his military about not only how the performance is going in terms of the war in Ukraine, but also the state of the economy as well. And really this sort of speaks to that enclosed sort of bubble, if you will, that the Russian president is receiving this bit of information. We know that President Biden isn't the one who released this information to the general public. Actually, the White House was asked about that earlier today, but also said that they confirmed that this is what was happening. They don't know how President Putin, of course, isn't going to react, but based off of intelligence reports and things that we're seeing from defense officials, we know that it is certainly impacting the Russian military in terms of morale. So, of course, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.